All right, let's go to Danny Leroux of The Athletic. He's a cap expert, knows the ins and outs of the game as well as anybody I know. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, man.
Happy to be on. How you doing?
We're doing well. Long time no see, but I've been following you, and you're doing terrific, man. Really, really thankful you're on. Let me start out with, how many teams have cap room that you think could possibly be interested in Draymond Green if he opts out?
Not a ton. I mean, and it's also the teams that Draymond Green would be interested in.
Sure.
Because one of the striking things is that there aren't many teams that have cap space that are, like, really good if they have Draymond Green. And so could he help out a team like the Pistons? Of course he could. And with Saginaw, that connection, maybe that's a little bit more interesting. But I don't really see it. Maybe if you're a big believer in, like, the Pacers or the Thunder or the Magic, but this isn't a year where, like, a good team, a really good team has cap space.
Lakers?
They could make it work, but they'd have to let go of basically everyone they brought in at the deadline. So that would be
right.
Well, it's possible. It's possible, but I'd say it's unlikely at the moment.
We're joined by Danny Leroux. He's a sports writer, author, and podcast host of the Dunked on Real GM Radio. He's a CBA expert, and he's unbelievably knowledgeable about the Cavs.
Yeah, Danny, I was telling Stoney the Warriors could use you. Speaking of Klay Thompson, Danny, I'm not all the way done with Klay Thompson, but I know his contract is bigger than his production, and I could think of like 6 teams that could use an outside shooter like him, the Lakers being one, the Knicks. How attractive do you think Klay Thompson and his current contract are to suitors out there, if any?
It's a big number. So if Klay Thompson's contract will be in the last year next year, it'll be $43.2 million. That's a lot of money for anybody. And the belief would have to be that Klay can be better than he was not only in the playoffs, but most of the season. He had some really hot stretches. So I think the teams that you'd be looking at if the Warriors are trying to shed salary in that way, no one's going to take him on full because basically nobody has that kind of money laying around other than the Spurs. But you could see a team like, let's say, the Knicks, who don't have cap space to work with, but they do have flexibility under the tax. And so it's like, hey, can he make your rotation better? Can you save the Warriors, I don't know, 15, 20 million? Yeah, there could be a path to do that. And that would be the most painful goodbye that the Warriors have done during this era. So it's possible, and we're going to learn a lot about what ownership, and honestly, it's more of an ownership decision than a general manager decision, what they're willing to pay, what they're willing to part with.
Danny Leroux joining us on 95.7 The Game. He works for The Athletic. He's a salary cap expert. Danny, do you see a scenario in which the Warriors re-sign Draymond Green for 3 years?
Absolutely. And there are a couple different key parts of that. One is the biggest issue. So the new collective bargaining agreement, we don't have all the details yet, but we have most of them. It's really harsh on teams that spend a lot of money. But the big penalties in that don't kick in for a couple of years because basically the idea is like, hey, if we're going to change all these rules, we can't do it right away. And so the Warriors would basically have about a year and a half of buffer to work through. And so, yes, if they retain Green and don't move like Poole or Klay or anything else, it'd be a very expensive team, but it wouldn't really change much long term. It's Joe Lacob's pocketbook, not mine, but you have that. But then starting in 24, 25, so we're a year and a half down the road, then things start to get hard. So I could absolutely see them bring back Draymond, and then if Klay takes a pay cut, or if you need to move on from somebody like Poole, you can do it then. But no, I actually think if Draymond's the one to do it, I think the more likely thing is that he comes back than that he leaves.
Wow. Danny, not to put you on the spot, but we all saw Jordan get punched. We saw Kuminga at times pouting. He wasn't part of the playoff rotation. I'm asking you, what do you think of those two players? And do you think if they were other teams covet both of those players, or do you think they know there was a reason that both of them kind of had down years?
I think there's a difference between Kuminga and Poole. Kuminga didn't really get the chance. And also he's so young that I think another team could say, there's this idea of I think John Hollinger came up with this as the second draft. Like if you get a bite at that apple, you can find something there that the Warriors either haven't found or haven't used. And he doesn't make much money right now, and so you could get there. And I mean, that's part of the reason if I were advising the Warriors, I would say try not to trade him unless the team makes something ridiculous. Poole's a little different because the Warriors tried to put him in positions to succeed. Like, they played him next to Curry a fair amount over the last couple of years. They played him apart, had him run the show. And Poole can be and will be better than he was in the playoffs and this past year. However, I don't think we saw enough this year to say, if you gave him the keys to probably not the Warriors, but another team, he would do great. Like, he could do fine, and he can do better in time. But that combined with him not improving on defense, that would make me a little bit more dubious, let's put it that way. But there are so many teams, even if he's imperfect, that would be interested. I don't know how interested they'd be at, $28, $29 million a year, so maybe it's a little bit of a negative contract, but not like horrendous or anything like that.
Danny Leroux joining us on 95.7 The Game. He works for The Athletic. He's a salary cap expert. All right, here. Let me throw this at you, Danny. This is can I assume, and I don't know if you kind of advocate for what a team should do or not, but it sounds like you might be thinking extend Draymond and see if you can get something for Poole that may be more compatible to the Warriors and run it back next year or give it another crack at it.
If Draymond's willing to do it, I would too. I mean, I think while Stephen Curry is still one of the best players in the league, like you don't know when another opportunity like this is going to come around. And the people who know that are longtime Warriors fans better than anybody. I mean, I wrote a book on their history, and even this is the longest run, but even things like, Run TMC, like that was a couple of years. Like you run into those circumstances. So I think you try that if you can, if Lacob is willing to spend the money. And the other part about that is, they actually have more time here than I think some think. Because, yes, the team would be very expensive this coming year. If they don't, they could do other cost-cutting moves too. But you have about a year and a half to make those decisions. So you don't even have to trade Poole now. You could see how the season goes. You could see how the first half goes and do something at the deadline. But Steve Kerr basically said this in the exit interviews. If the Warriors lose Draymond Green, in all likelihood, they are done as a championship contender. Because even though he's not the best player on the team, he's impossible to replace. And so, to me, if you're still in the mix, and I think the Warriors can be in the mix, then if I were advising, if you're willing to spend the money, then I think you owe it to more yourselves than anyone else to see if you can make it happen.
Yeah, Danny, that's my $1 million question. You kind of just touched on it. Do you think Joe Lacob would do that, or do you think he's looking at this thing like, I've done all I can, the writing's on the wall, or do you see him going past 450?
450 is a lot, and I think that the way that you could sell him on it would be a whole lot easier for Bob Myers to make the sales pitch than anyone else. I mean, I have full respect for anyone else who could take that job, but it would be temporary because Klay Thompson's contract expires, and the salary cap is going up. It's not going to go up like a bunch like when the Warriors got KD, but it's going to go up. So that bill is going down no matter what. And if Klay Thompson wants $50 million for his next contract, well, then he's probably going to be getting it somewhere else. But you'd have to take some real pain for the upcoming season unless the team wants to take Poole on, and you're willing to let him go. They'd have to replace him in different ways. So, but it would be really, and it's to say 1 year. I mean, this team's been expensive for the last few years, so it's not like it's 1 year ever. It would really be 1 year where they'd be in this like incredible range, and then they'd be, more run-of-the-mill expensive after that.
Danny Leroux joining us on 95.7 The Game. What about this kind of thought process? All right, the Warriors won it 2 years ago. They got some breaks, but whatever, they won it. This year they were a 44-win team, and they almost got bumped in the first round. They got to the second round. If Draymond walked and we, used Kuminga, could we be a 44-win team? Maybe, right? Warriors could win 44 if Draymond left. And I get that maybe their title chances aren't as good, but are they really realistic with Draymond anymore?
It's a great question. There isn't a definitive yes or no there, especially considering, this team is getting older, and it's the hard thing with Klay missing all that time with injuries. It's like you're never getting everybody back to what they were, even if they can be better than this season, like for Klay as example. It's honestly, I use the phrase a lot of defining success. And so the idea is, what kind of team do you want to be? And if the Warriors are happy being a team that is that makes it but probably won't win it, yeah, I mean, Stephen Curry is good enough that you can be in that range probably for the next 3-4 years. I think that would be completely reasonable. And Kuminga stepping in, yeah, I think you have that, and they have foundation with not only with Curry but also with players like Looney, who's under contract for 2 more years, and you give these young guys a little bit more latitude to step up. Is that fine with Curry? Is that fine with Klay and some of the other players involved? It's hard to know, but that is the kind of the middle path that it wouldn't stun me to see the Warriors take, particularly if the decision to move on is Draymond's rather than teams. And again, that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
Danny, we're up against it, but I got to get you out of here on this one. Warrior Twitter and the fans, they're mad. Dub Nation. I'm hearing Wiggins left and right, possible trade scenario. But Danny, he has a team-friendly contract. Wiggins is not going anywhere, right?
I would be very surprised if Wiggins went anywhere right now. I mean, he's an essential part if this team wants to be competitive. And, I mean, if they want to go in a really different direction, they could do it. But I would be very surprised if he's somewhere else.
Danny, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. You're great at what you do.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Danny Leroux of the Athletic.
Good stuff.
Salary cap expert, but maybe more important, can explain salary cap issues in a way that we all can understand. So.